applications out there you would only want to do per user profile. And you wait for it. Okay, success. We created an application, right? Well, not quite. We still have a little bit more to do. So we're going to come down here, find our application, click on look at the properties. Now with a package, you have a program. With an application, you have a deployment type. So on this first tab, it's pulling everything in. The date published, I like to check this box because if you have it in the Software Center for people to use or just for your own benefit, you can see that, hey, this is the one I published on the 19th. This is an important checkbox. Allow the application to be installed from the Install Application Task Sequence action without being deployed. If you do not deploy the software to a collection and you don't check this box, you won't be able to run it from a task sequence. So by default, I always just check that box to cover my bases. The application catalog, this is what they're going to see in the Software Center. After a while, you may have a lot of software in there, so you're going to want keywords. And another cool thing by doing an application is you can put a pretty icon on it. And being a girl, I like to have things pretty. When you look at the Software Center, it's just much nicer to have a visual, the Java icon, an Adobe icon to pick from. And if you look at where it can pick those icon files from, it can be DLLs, XEs, JPEGs, icons. And so I have the original executable in there. And it will pull up and show you what icons are available. Sometimes it'll pull up multiple ones for you to pick from. When you do Google Chrome, it'll give you like 7 or 8 different ones to pick from. If you want to display this as a featured app and highlight it in the company portal, that means in the Software Center it'll have a big banner up at the top that it's a highlighted app. So hey, we got a pretty icon. I'm happy. I'm going to come back to this tab. Distribution settings, this is the same as packages, whether medium, priority, low. And if you want to distribute it to preferred distribution points, this option, pre-stage distribution points, are for distribution points that have either a really slow or unreliable connection. That's basically where you take the media, make a package of it, walk it over to the distribution point, plug it in, extract it on that end so the content's not going over your network. So generally you want to manually copy the content to those. Deployment types, this is the equivalent of a program. We're going to edit that and look at the details. This is where some of the magic happens. So this is your content location should you need to change where the content's located. If you persist it in the client cache, it will stay on the people's computer. So if you leave that checked, they're going to end up with piles of extra files. Allow contents to use a fallback source location. If you have more than one distribution point out there, it's not available on one, it'll pull it from another distribution point so it doesn't fail on the end user side. And what to do if it's a slow or unreliable area. What do you do not download it, or do you download it and then run it locally? Alright, here's the installation program. If you needed to add in any other switches, if you found you needed to add a no restart so people don't get a restart on their computer, you could add that in. There's the uninstall string it pulled in from the MSI. And down here, if you browse out and grab the MSI again, this allows it to detect if there's changes in your source files, and it'll automatically try to repair them if there's any issues. The detection method, this is my favorite part of applications. With a package, you just said, push it out, go. Without doing extensive scripting, there wasn't a good way to tell if it already existed on the computer. You can edit the existing detection method. By default, it pulled in the installer code. You can say it must exist on the system, or you can say not equal to, greater than equal to. If it was a certain version, you'd have that option. if we wanted to do a file system, let's say we want to go out and find, it really doesn't matter. You can grab whatever file it is, and it'll pull in any version number. You can say if it equals that version number, less than or equal to. I think this is helpful for, like Java would be a good instance, because if it's a version 8 or greater, it's already there. If a file or folder exists, let it be there. I work with a lot of educational people, so there's a lot of one-off softwares out there that don't have nice detection methods built in. You might have a batch file copying files down and a shortcut on the desktop running it. You could say when the folder exists, it's there. You can do registry keys. And this computer name up here, you can browse out and connect to other computers for both files, folders, and registries. So if you're trying to do a detection of something and you're on a server, you can browse out to a computer you know it's installed on and pull it from there. So we'd say this registry key has to exist on the computer for that detection to work. You can use custom scripts also to detect. The user experience, the install for system or for user, logon requirement, whether or not a user's logged in is default with applications. It's not in packages. So most of the time you want it to run whether there's a user logged onto the computer or not. You don't want to wait for them to log on in the morning and just run it whenever the computer's turned on. So you can run it as hidden, normal, maximized. Every now and then you get an application that you only want to run when there's a user logged in. I can't think of an example right now, but that would be an option. If you specify that it has to be ran when a user's logged in, you can't use it in a task sequence to deploy the operating system and the software, because the user will never be logged into it, so it won't let it go in a task sequence. This maximum allowed runtime is how long it will try to run before it fails in Software Center or before it fails in a task sequence. So if you're deploying an operating system and software, and this is in there, and it's failing, it will try for 2 hours before it moves on to the next step. So you want to be reasonable with this. An Office install could take 30 minutes. Java, I'd say if it's trying for 15 minutes, give up. You can put an estimate of 5 minutes, and the estimate is what they will see in the Software Center. So if an end user wants to install it themselves, they're like, okay, a 5-minute install, I'm game for that. A 2-hour install, I'm going to push the button when I go home at the end of the day. The Requirements tab, if you have software that needs a condition, let's say you need something that has to have at least 4 gigs of memory to run. You don't want it to install if there isn't 4 gigs of memory in the system. It won't even show up in Software Center if it doesn't meet these requirements. Same with operating system. Let's say we only want to do it for 64-bit systems, or vice versa, Windows 7, Windows 8. We can do it by user. 2012 R2 allows for device affinity, so you can either manually say this is someone's primary device, or you can let Configuration Manager figure out after people have logged on so many hours a day for so long, set that as their primary device. So you can say only install this software if it's a 64-bit machine and the primary user's on that device. And you can allow for custom, which the sky is pretty much the limit for detection methods, registry assemblies, scripts. Return codes, it pulls all these in from an MSI. If you have a custom application and you know there's other return codes, you can add those in. Dependencies, this is really nice. If you have, like, let's say an Elmo document camera that has to have Adobe Air or something silly like that on the system as a prerequisite, or you have something that has to have the prerequisite of .NET 3.5 framework, you can add that as a prerequisite. And because it has the detection methods built in, it will detect and see if the 3.5 framework is already on there. If it is, great, it'll proceed with the install. If it's not on there, it will install, this little box is checked, it will auto-install the prerequisite first. So you can see how this would be very helpful with a lot of those different applications out there. So let's say if we add that. And that wasn't a good example. We'll go Adobe Reader. All right, so it's looking for .NET 3.5 or Adobe Reader on the system. So now, if we go back, we can, actually, I'm going to take that off for right now.
Live?
Because it's live and for time's sake. All right, we're lucky today. Java doesn't need dependencies. And the nice thing about applications, with the package you saw, we had to distribute the content, a whole separate step before we could deploy it. The application in the wizard, if you go to deploy the software, will automatically distribute content for you. So I picked my distribution point. A lot of places will have multiple distribution points. We talked about doing the deployments, making it available in Software Center or making it required. If you make it available, it'll just be there for them to pick. If you make it required, we then have options to pre-deploy the software to the user's primary device and wake up packets if your wake on LAN's working, if you have metered internet connections, what to do. You can schedule when you're going to push it out. You can set deadlines. And what to do. Do you want to display it in software and show all notifications? That means people will get a pop-up saying, hey, you have software ready. Hey, you still have software ready. I like to keep it and only show notifications for computer restarts. What to do when the deadline's reached? Do you want to install software? Do you want to go ahead and reboot people's computers? The maintenance windows allow you to not let software updates be installed. So let's say you have labs or offices, certain people that you absolutely, no matter what, do not want software or anything to interrupt them during the day. You can set these maintenance windows so nothing will happen during that time frame. You can override those maintenance windows by checking these boxes. And you can configure alerts. So if you want to keep an eye on, if it's really important that the deployment hits 80% or 100%. And if you have Operations Manager, which is another component of the System Center suite, whether you want to send alerts to that. So then you're going to confirm your settings. I always like to check and make sure, hey, I'm doing a required deployment. Do I really want to do that? This is going to go out to everybody. So for today, no, I'm going to back it up. And I'm going to make it available. You can schedule it. If you don't want it to be ready till like 8 o'clock the next morning, you can do that. Otherwise, it defaults to as soon as possible. Okay, so we just created an application and deploy it. why don't we take just like literally 2 minutes if anybody needs to step out, check email, and we'll be right back.
Got a lot of custom scripts. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. It's just like you don't need to touch machines. And you just push it. So every start, you settle. Yeah, you check it for 64 bit and all that stuff. Right. So yeah, definitely. So you can do it overnight. Like both times, right? And then it goes, so then you got one nowhere. Which is running actions and steps to like drive. Yeah. Test full. Is it Rod? Yeah.
All right, is everybody ready?
Yeah, no problem. Do my best.
Okay, so we created a package. We created an application. I want to show you what that looks like in the software center. So this is what all the end users have on their computer, and this is what they see. The difference between the package, you see this generic icon, and then you see the pretty icons on the applications. Just a little bit more user-friendly too. If I'm going looking for specific software where we're trained to look for certain icons. So a user would come in and they'd say, you know, I want to upgrade my Java, and I'm going to install. So it gives them a visual. This is, even though it's a hidden install, they can still see what's going on. It shows down here that 5-minute estimated time frame, and it says that a restart might be required. So this is a pretty quick one. And when I first went to using the software center for the end users, it took a little while to train them to go there. They were so used to us doing everything for them. But once they got used to having the ability to be able to self-update, they didn't have to call the help desk. You know, people didn't have to either physically come over or remote into their computers. You know, they could control their own software updates. And with the application model, they also have this uninstall button. Oops, that's not what I wanted to install. I can also uninstall that application too. All right, so we are going to create a package, but we're going to do it manually. Let's pretend we don't have a nice MSI. So we're going to create an application, and we're going to say manually specify. You now have to type the name, update 866, publisher, more comments, software version, the same date published, and allow it to be deployed. You can still set user categories. Again, this is for Software Center. The keywords, the icon. That's what I get for clicking it 2 times. Okay, I'm going to pick the icon. Now, before it automatically created a deployment type for us, this time we have to add it. It still wants to try to pull in an MSI really bad. These are all the other options you can pull in manually, but you don't see any executables on there, right? So if you have an executable, you still have to manually specify. The content location, the same options whether you want to persist it in the client cache, and this is where you specify the installation program. Again, you browse out, it still wants to do an MSI. But we know it's an executable that we want to send out. And this is where you would also add any switches that you need. If it's a -S for silent or whatever the command lines are, that's where you specify it. If you want an uninstall program, you're going to have to specify that yourself too. And the detection rules, the ones that were nicely created for you before, are not this time. So we have to add one. And how to detect Java if I don't have the Windows installer code? Let's say we want to browse out and is it in here? There. That Java exe has to exist on this computer. So now we have a detection clause. It defaults to install for user, so we have to change that for system, and I want to do it whether or not a user is logged in. I want to be able to deploy this from a task sequence. The maximum allowed runtime, we're going to set to, again, 15 and an estimate of 5. And for everybody out there, I'm going to try to wrap this up closer to 4:30 so we have time for a few questions and or if there's any deer hunters out there that it's already too late to get out today. I'm sorry. I can say that because we're in Michigan. This is where if you wanted to add a requirement type, going back to memory requirements, operating system, how much space there is on a hard drive, and if there is any of the software dependencies. The only nice thing about doing all this manually is it walks you through all this in one whole long wizard, instead of when you first create the application, then you got to go in and edit the deployment type. So on one hand, I really like this because it's one long wizard. I don't have to go back and edit things. All right, so we now created a manual application. We fooled it without an MSI into letting us create an application. So we can go back and look at the properties, and it'll look just like before, but all of this was manually entered. So if I goofed up and said, oh, this isn't a -S, it was a -silent, you can still go back in and fix it. When I talked about the nice dashboard for looking at things in the monitoring workspace, I want to brag just a little bit about SCCM's reporting capabilities. It has hundreds and hundreds, I think it was close to 500 reports built in. So for all of you, you have people out there that want nice metrics. They want to know, well, how many computers are out there, how many have less than 4 gigs of RAM, and you can run all those reports. But on this deployments workspace, it shows all the deployments out there, whether they're made to be available or if we had any required ones out there. I can look and see, oh, okay, I've got a bunch of required deployments out there that I forgot about. Maybe I should clean those up. You can click on that deployment. It'll show you how many were successful or in progress. And if I click into the deployment, this is where it gets a little more granular and says, okay, it was successful on those devices. It's still in progress on this device, and luckily no errors. But if there were errors, it would show you the specific details about them. Now, for those of you who have not seen SCCM, I'll show you briefly what a task sequence looks like for deploying both operating systems and software. You say a task sequence for software. Well, a task sequence is just a series of instructions. That's all it is. So if you're using it to deploy an operating system, joining the domain, installing software, you can do that. You can also just use a custom task sequence for software. So for this one, because Java is so wonderful, I like to create a task sequence that I'd use just a generic package that runs a script that pulls off every ounce of Java off the computer first. Then it's installing the Java applications. And the nice thing is you can put multiple applications in this one step, and you can say if one fails, keep going. And then I have it remove Java update because it absolutely drives me bonkers when people would call the help desk and, hey, my Java needs updated, just because that little pop-up in the corner is coming up. I would just get rid of that altogether. So if you wanted to add anything in here, you could just add in, whether it's an application or a package. And you could add as many as you wanted in here. I would use this for summer updates. It would do a whole task sequence that would install Java, Flash, Adobe Reader, Office, Windows updates. You can do all that in one step. All right, before I go any further, do we have any questions piling up, or anybody have any questions yet about deploying applications? Everybody's a wizard here? Awesome. I think that's all I have to cover for today. The biggest things I wanted to hit on with the applications are the different detection methods and how that works.
You had mentioned that this bypasses the need to have administrator access over a desktop.
Correct. The Software Center runs with the site system's a computer account, so it runs with those administrative rights. So for those of you who didn't hear the question, there was this bypasses the need for administrator rights on the local computer.
Jody, can you use this as an inventory system?
Absolutely. The question is, can you use this for an inventory system? And the answer is yes. Because you can set it up to scan anything and everything in your Active Directory in your network, and then you can come in and write report or pull up reports of everything that's out there. Let's just look. Hardware general. Specific work group or domain. Let's go for this shows all the computers, what the workstations are. The different reports show different things. So if you want a detailed report that's going to show the model, the memory, everything in it, you can run reports for who's logged on to what computers. Any other questions about deploying software in your environments? Have you ran into any tough ones you've had issues with?
I hate Adobe CS6.
Yeah, Creative Cloud's a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can deploy that with SCCM. One of the most fun ones I had was the Cisco Vpn, because it disconnects your network connection while it's installing, but because System Center has the ability to download and then run the program, you could still deploy the VPN.
That's kind of, I was leading to my next question, is can you deploy to a remote workforce, like if they're outside on the internet, but outside your local network?
If you have SCCM set up with a public key infrastructure, you can do that. Or if they're on a VPN or direct access. So the question was, if you couldn't hear, can you deploy software to computers that are off-site? And that answer is they have to be connected somehow, VPN, direct access, or we can set SCCM up so it uses a public key infrastructure so it can talk off-site.
Active setup, if you had like per user settings and multiple people were logged in, where you just cache the client on the machine, or would you just pass active distribution?
Multiple people, interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry, but like active setup where there's H key current user count, so each person logs in has the new package rerun on the machine. Would you just cache it on their local machine, or?
That would be if they're on site, and I guess it depends how big it is. But yeah, if it wasn't very big, I'd persist it in the client cache. But you want to be careful piling up too much in the local cache.
With the client caching it in the client, is there an expiration on that? You can cache it for a week or 2 weeks.
If you check that box to persist it will persist. If you don't check the box, it'll be there for 30 days.
Okay.
We have a few questions coming in from online.
Okay.
One attendee is wondering what the remove all Java steps look like.
The remove all JavaScript.
Let me get ready for that.
You need to capture this.
Yep.
This is something, if I have a blog site that I could post these scripts to so people could get them. Because we have this batch file runs and it kills all browsers in an Explorer. I don't have Chrome in there yet, but you can add the extra browsers in there, because as you know, Java doesn't like to install properly if browsers are open. Then that calls this VBS script, which goes through and uninstalls every version of Java on the computer. And this disable Java update is just a simple registry key. So in SCCM, that's just a command line to add a registry key. So if that's of big interest, I could share that out. We can beat Java together. That's okay.
Is there a recommended method of packaging an executable that doesn't allow for silent install switches?
There's a lot of ways to get around the silent. Well, one, you can do it as an interactive. The question is if you have something of software that doesn't have a silent install, how do you get around it? You can put it in the software center and make it interactive so that people can actually click next, whatever, if it's not too complicated, because then it runs with the site system admin rights. There's Admin Studio. I've used MCO MSI Packager. There's different tools out there that monitor the installation and package it up into a nice MSI for you.
I used MCO before. I was more curious if there was a module SCCM that would help.
Not yet.
One question is, how is it licensed by the server, client, or both?
It depends on the scenario. And whether you're a corporate entity or education. But licensing is a whole nother big conversation that I would say talk to whoever you buy your Microsoft software from and say, get me a quote. This is my environment.
What version of SCCM was that you were running?
This is R2 SP1, so this is the latest version that handles Windows 10. So I just upgraded their site last weekend and went up there and we have Windows 10 deploying. So in order to not only deploy Windows 10, but to manage any Windows 10 clients, you have to have Service Pack 1 on R2 or Service Pack 2 if you're still on just 2012.
Have you ever run across anybody running embedded in configuration manager?
Windows embedded, like point of sale equipment?
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yep, you can manage them and push applications and updates out. Yep. And Shannon, did you?
Yeah, is there a limit to how many applications you can put in a test sequence?
In each application step, there's a limit. I want to say it was like around 15 per step, but you can do multiple steps. So there is no limit to actually how many applications you can do in a task sequence.
When should you use a package instead of an application?
If it's something really simple, if it's a command line, if it's like a simple script, a batch file, or if it's something that you want to do as a reoccurring schedule, let's say you have a batch file that does a little X copy of users' data, once a day out to some network share. You can schedule that as a reoccurring event easier as a package than an application. Applications do not allow for reoccurring events. I have up here this www.thejodie.net. That's my blog site. So if you want to contact me, I try to post the latest and greatest. If I find cool tools out there, I post them. If you want to email me other questions, I will get the Java help stuff shared out there probably by tomorrow morning. So any other questions out there for now? All right, I have one quick ending survey to do. It's another Kahoot. I promise this is very quick. While we're waiting, I don't specialize just in SCCM. I do the whole System Center suite because with SCCM, Orchestrator, and Service Manager, you can create a help desk solution where people can put in tickets. Orchestrator does runbook workflow, so it can do any automation you want, whether it's resetting passwords or creating accounts or spinning up VMs. So in a sense, you could have an onboarding process where your HR person could put in all the new person's information. It would create their AD account, reset their password, add them to any groups they needed to be in, set up their email, and assign a computer to them. And then it would email all that information that it was done successfully, and it was logged in the Service Manager Help Desk solution. So it gives you good tracking of data, and one, they didn't have to bug me at Help Desk to create a user account, which is everybody's goal. So if you have any more questions about how all that automation works, I would love to even set up a future webinar to cover that kind of automation. Okay, so let's get started. And you won't hurt my feelings if for some reason you didn't find it helpful. But my boss just walked in, so if you could be nice, it'd be really, really cool. Yay, thank you.
What? There was somebody that didn't find value?
Sorry, Jody.
The heckler. Did this session inspire you to use the application model instead of the legacy package model?
That's a trick question.
That's not loaded at all. There's still good reasons to use the package model. Yay!
See?
That wasn't me this time.
If CDH offered SCCM training sessions, would you be interested?
How many times can I vote yes?
And what future SCCM webinar topics would you be interested in?
And more.
I'm sorry, it only let me do so many. But you can
Wonder how
go.
many greens there will be.
Oh, there's always one.
I mean, don't
That got me.
Ooh.
Awesome. So those 6 people that already know it all will help you do.
Why were they even here? Ask them, are you here for the beer or the?
All right. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you taking out the time to come visit today.
Maybe.
So we're in the process of, and when I say process, I mean we just issued purchase orders for switching from Symantec endpoint protection to the McAfee's endpoint protection. Have you ever automated like that whole process of installing Symantec, installing?
Well, endpoint will uninstall all previous antivirus. When you
Oh, will it? Okay. Okay. Cool.
Really? Speaking of beer, maybe you don't have questions. There are.
Oh yeah, they'll stomp all over it, right?
yeah, it'll be gone.
I want that.